Several months ago, a good friend said to me, "How are things in Haiti these days?" And then he stopped and said, "I've been hearing the same drumbeat out of Haiti for 40 years." Well, I was glad to tell him and glad to tell you that that's no longer the case. There are lots of good things happening in Haiti.
As I'm working here, it's like something I'm doing for God. If someone is working for God and he do a good job, will have a reward from God.
Since the earthquake, we have planted 3 churches. We are looking to plant a church where there are people. Many of them are those who do not have any place to stay because they lost everything, you say, in the earthquake. And our duty is to look for them, to go after them.
Village Health Haiti in the last year has just really taken off. We're working with a program called Community Health Evangelism. Communities that we go into, less than 10% of the people, of the population, have any type of a bathroom. That's really bad from a public health standpoint. So what we've done through Village Health Haiti is we've come in and we said, look, this is why you need a latrine, this is how you build one, this is how you maintain it. And then through a process of negotiations, we've come up with a plan that every family who will dig a pit for a pit latrine, as God provides the money to us through donors and churches, we provide them with 2 bags of cement. Then they're able to build a slab over top of their latrine and to put whatever else they want to put over it for a cover.
The Laguna Westland Hospital started in 1958 by the Westland Church. The hospital sometimes is full. We do not have enough beds to put patients. We hope we'll have enough spaces for patients when the new hospital will be finished.
Two components of the outreach of the Wesleyan Church in Haiti are pastor training, which is called EQUIP, and education among adults.
The Wesleyan Institute of English Language Studies offers classes in English and computer skills. It's the hope and prayer that as these adults go through these classes, they'll be better equipped to serve Haiti and improve the lives of themselves and others.
The compound does have a lot of expenses, especially in maintenance, vehicles. We have 5 facilities that generate income in Laguna and 1 in the mainland. We use that money to take care of our expenses. We built a new guest house to have more income for our expenses. And we use some of that money too for charity. When people come and they don't have any help, we help them.
Today is Tuesday, October the 16th, 2012. I'm Matthew T.G.
I'm Heath Mullican.
And I'm Tony Casey. Welcome to the Techology Show, a weekly podcast featuring technology, theology, and everything in between. This is episode 176.
We have a great show planned for you today. Things are a little bit different in the studio, if you can't tell. Last week, we had a great interview with Claire Diaz-Ortiz from Twitter, and we're giving away, not one now, but 2 copies of her book, Twitter for Good. We're giving away a Kindle version and a regular version. What do you call it?
Hard copy.
Physical book. And so you have another week to enter that contest at thetechnologyshow.com/giveaway.
As you said, we got a great show lined up today, and we have in studio. Now, this is the first guest we've had in our new studio. We have Dan and Joy Irvine with us. They are the Carib Atlantic area directors for Global Partners, and we have kind of had a connection with them, really with Matthew. Matthew's been to Haiti twice now, is that right? Yeah. And we've also had their daughter, Beth Peterson, on the show. And so while we have probably talked about them in the past, we actually have them here in person.
You may forget, but Dan has been on the show one time.
That's right.
He was on our Global Partners panel, that 30-minute segment from General Conference.
He was the shy one on the panel.
You don't want to get accused of that very often.
We welcome you into the studio, into the show today.
Thank you.
All right, why don't we just start by you telling us your journey. What eventually brought you to Haiti?
Well, I'll tell my version of it. I was very young, and I had fallen in love with a really great-looking guy who was a biochem major, which in my mind meant that I would never have to be a pastor's wife or a missionary.
Nice,
and
yes.
Then God called him to ministry, and after we were married, God really called him to Haiti, and I was old-fashioned and traditional enough to know that his call was my call. And I have to say that it was a growing up and maturing time. God is good.
Yeah. Is that kind of your journey too there, Dan?
Or she talk about something else.
She said she's going to give her version of the story. What's your version?
I have a wife and 4 daughters. I haven't had an opinion in years. Oops, I'm going to pay
You're
for
going to
that.
leave the show in big time trouble.
Well, over the years, tell us, what have been your responsibilities in Haiti, and what's the current state of Global Partners and the Wesleyan Church in Haiti?
Well, in 2005, kind of back to the journey question a little bit to lead into this. In 2005, I was asked to go to Global Partners headquarters to participate in a meeting. And the subject at hand, and quite a collection of people who have Haiti experience had been gathered there. And the area director at the time, Rick West, was meeting with the leadership of Global Partners to discuss the issues of the Wesleyan Church in Haiti. And there were several. The mission's 70 years old. We have a very significant history in Haiti and a very large enterprise. We have about 130 preaching points, 82 schools, a number of ministries, including the hospital and community health program that you saw featured in the video clip. But there were some issues related to strategic thinking, future plans, some holes in the administrative function of the church. And those had reached a fairly critical level. And those who were responsible were feeling that Haiti, the field, was kind of stuck and needed new leadership. And I was invited as someone who had lived in Haiti. Joy and I lived in Haiti from 1981 to 1987 when we were quite young. And we had kept connections in Haiti, knew a lot of people there. In 2000, I started visiting our field in Haiti 2 or 3 times a year, taking mission trips there. Primarily, my motive was to stir some excitement in our local church at the time.
Okay.
And but we became very familiar with the missionaries and the national leaders in the field's issues. So I thought I was a consultant at this meeting. The very short version is, before the meeting was over, the general director of Global Partners at that time, Don Bray, had looked across the room and pointed his finger at me and basically said, if the Wesleyan Church is willing to seriously engage with these issues and provide the resources, human and material, to address the issues in Haiti? Are you willing to be the point person, the leader? And frankly, to that very moment, I had not considered anything short-term to go back to Haiti. But as God does sometimes, even as the question was still banging around the room, I knew the answer. And, so that was the beginning of this present journey.
So let me interrupt you. So going into that meeting, you had
no idea.
No idea.
No.
But after you left the meeting, did you give them? Was the answer yes right away, or is this, I need to think about this?
Well, it was apparent that a lot of emotion had played on my face, and the mobilization people from Global Partners, the instant the meeting was over, sat down. John Steppe sat down across from me and started filling out forms, and we really did. I gave the right answer to that group of people in reply to the question. You have to be very pious and correct and say I have to pray about that. But the truth was that I knew at that moment that this was a call. And one of the interesting things, I called Joy from the airport to tell her that my plane had been my flight had been canceled from Indianapolis to Pittsburgh. We were in that area at the time, and she said to me, "How did the meeting go?" And I said, "If we ever went back to the mission field, where do you suppose we would go?" That was kind of a code between the two of us, because that's the line I had used on her when I first announced to her that I felt called to the mission field. And she started laughing, and she said, "God's been preparing me for months that we had a big change coming, and I kind of suspected this might be it."
That's a great story. were you going to ask something? I heard you just a moment ago.
Well, I'm Carib Atlantic.
Mm-hmm.
I know that Haiti is probably like where the major, that is our major emphasis and our major focus. But what all else falls under that heading?
Actually, it is what Dan likes to call the orphan children of Global Partners that don't really fit. And so it's Haiti, Guyana, and Suriname, with a presence in French Guiana, and then a couple of other islands in the Caribbean that are French-speaking, and where there are pockets of Haitians.
Okay.
So that's what the area consists of.
Okay.
I think for a lot of people, the earthquake, the 2010 earthquake, is still in their minds. And so bring us up to date on that a little bit. Where's the country come since then? Where does it need to go yet?
Well, there have been a lot of news reports about the slowness. There was an immediate response to the relief needs of Haiti, and that was very significant. But the long-term development part of the response to the earthquake in Haiti has been very slow and disjointed. And it's only just in the last few months or the last year that any significant evidence of a real solid, permanent type response is apparent. There are finally some permanent housing type buildings going up in the area called Moncabrit, north of the city. There are some very substantial apartment and individual family units being developed there. There are thousands of them underdeveloped, but compared to the need, it's still insignificant. One of the major trends after the earthquake and for too long afterwards, there were tent cities, concentrated pockets of population in very substandard housing, basically tents and metal shacks scattered all through the city. A lot of those are gone, not all of them. A lot of those are gone, moved out of the areas where they were, concentrated around the airport. If you visit there, you'll see they're no longer there. But that's not necessarily because any positive response has happened. A lot of that is simply reflecting a huge migration of people from these inner city pockets to an enormous squatter camp north of the city. Tens of thousands of little huts. Matt's seen them. Tens of thousands of little huts and metal shacks. an area that was some of it's private land, but most of it was government land on the mountains and the hillsides, the foothills north of the capital city, north of the plain where the capital is located. And some of those are actually very substantial buildings. There's people building masonry structures. The title to the property is still unclear. I think the people believe that if they stake claim to it, the government will eventually give them title to the property there.
It's fascinating to me. One of the things that I did after my first visit, I was told about how these places sprung up. And that would have been a little over a year after the earthquake had happened. And I remember Daniel Stanley. He was a guy on the trip with me. He says, I remember this place, and these homes didn't exist. These whole communities of people and huge communities of people. And so I came back, and I fired up Google Earth, satellite imagery. And on Google Earth, it's got a timeline. You can go back in time through previous satellite imagery, and it was just fascinating, and it still is. You go back to the year before and then just progressively go through those pictures. And, I mean, I got to imagine that some of those places, and it's right as you're coming out of Port-au-Prince out onto Route 1, I guess it is, that would take up to that big community there. I can't imagine that it's ever going to not exist now. It seems like it's going to be like that is, I mean, it will be a community from here until...
Oh, it's growing to this day.
Well, and the exciting thing is for the Wesleyan Church is there are already 2 new church plants in that area because our national superintendent, Pastor Doucette, really felt called to begin that process, and they have other areas that they're going to move into. So it's exciting.
Yeah.
While we're on the subject of progress in the country, one of the questions in the chat room is, how is the work on the hospital and the guest house coming? I know that's been 2 major projects that's been going on as far as our work in Haiti. So can you
explain the projects for those that maybe tuning in and have never heard of them?
Right.
Well, we began to plan the hospital project before the earthquake, and the building was substandard. It was old. It wasn't proper anymore for a modern hospital operation, and had some structural issues.
And can I say that's an understatement?
Yes.
I mean, just having had eyes on, that's an understatement of the hour right there.
I try to be diplomatic. Yeah. And so these plans were already on the board, and we had already begun to develop some strategic partnerships, both within and outside the Wesleyan Church, to help us push these projects along. The earthquake came in the middle of that process, but unfortunately, because of the way the funding process works, once you have a substantial amount of money donated by especially an outside organization, we didn't have the liberty to wait until our church rebuild process was finished to begin the hospital. So we had to launch all this together, which is absolutely insane. And yet God is good, and the hospital... one of the good things about the hospital rebuild is that our major partners in this rebuild are Lemonade, which is a Scottish charity, and Compassion UK, and some support from Compassion USA or International. And because of that support, have been able to hire. Actually, they've hired a full-time project manager who's a professional project manager from England, and he and his family have come and actually have been living on Loganaw for the last year, and they're there for the duration, and so that's been an enormous benefit.
And
so
a fantastic family too.
Yes.
I mean, what better people could you have? They are.
Right.
They
Absolutely.
are fun. Their kids are fun. That's something else that is just somebody made mention of about. They're on Loganaw, and a lot of my focus and attention is there before the show. I mentioned that's really my experience is the island of Loganaw. There's so many kids, so many young families that are working there. There is such a vibrancy.
It's true. It makes it fun.
Yeah.
You guys kind of shared how God kind of worked your story out and going back to Haiti. I think of my good friend Greg Edmonds. He and Heidi are down in Haiti now. A lot of people may not know this. Greg, just a few years before going to Haiti, was kind of just in some life transition and got into construction and got his contractor's license.
Right.
Little did he know he was going to be called to Haiti to help do these building projects. But it's just neat because as he's going through this whole process here,
Yeah.
He's kind of like, man,
It's
I
great
just
to hear
don't
him tell that
know.
story too, because
Yeah.
he felt like he was kind of at a dead end. Like,
Yep.
well, I'm ordained as a minister. Where, God, what are you doing with
Yeah.
me? What's next? Yeah.
Well, Greg manages the guest house rebuild, and they're on the same lot. They're just literally 100 yards apart.
Yeah.
And they're both major projects. And
Right.
the hospital and the guest house rebuild, the guest house build, the new guest house build are very much related, because in the long-term plan for the hospital, it's going to be a long time. It could be generations before Haiti develops the capacity to train, especially medical specialists. And so they do train general practitioners or family practice doctors in Haiti. And our doctors that work day to day in the hospital are Haitian, and as are our nurses there. But the need continues to be for things like general surgery, OBGYN, orthopedics, and those and other specialties. And so for the fairly long-term future, it's going to be important for us to be able to receive and to take proper care of visiting medical teams, because they bring specialists, especially the surgeons, people who are able to dramatically extend our capacity to care for people in that isolated population. The other thing is that and you're going to hear more about this in missions if you pay attention, but the guest house is actually a BAM project, a business as a mission project. It's designed to be self-sustaining out the gate. It has never cost us a penny.
Right.
Even in its partially completed state, it is generating income. And it's designed not to make a big profit on mission teams, but to offer them good services, clean, safe place with good food, and give them the opportunity to come and do what they've come to do, their ministry in Haiti, in a safe and secure environment. People have no problem paying the modest fees that we charge for that. But with the economy, it actually generates some revenue. And so both the guest houses on Lagunov, the old and the new, were kind of 1 foot on the boat and 1 foot on the dock there between the two buildings. But also the Ortlet Ministry Center on the mainland, on the logistics point on the mainland, generate a modest income, which is already being applied to support the mission and the national church.
Wow.
Matthew was telling me that on the island of Lagunov that there is a tremendous amount of respect among the people for the Wesleyans and for the work that they do there.
Well, our conversation was more along the lines of just the way that the community feels there on Lagunov. It's such. I was trying to relate just the paradigm of Port-au-Prince and the activity there and the amount of people and just the feeling that you have going around that city, and then being in Ensangale there on Lagunov and saying, okay, it's kind of like Greenville to Pickens or New York City to Pickens, whatever it is. There really wasn't a sense of unsafety necessarily, even though I'm sure there are bad characters and there's going to be anywhere. But there's talking with, and I can't remember his name, and he's an interesting guy, and I want to be careful where I go from here. But the second mayor, what's his name?
Dam.
Yes. Like, he just loves to talk about the Wesleyan mission there. He's got just tons of respect for it and tells other people to have respect for it. I stole from what you were saying, so you just continue on there.
Well, I guess my point was that, I mean, part of, especially with the hospital, I mean, this is something that means a lot to the community.
It does, because it's a underserved area and isolated geographically. I mean, you have to take a plane or a boat, and most of the people there who would have a medical emergency couldn't afford a plane. And so it's untold agony for somebody who's seriously ill or seriously injured to be placed on a sailboat. Oh, wow. Most of the boats, it's a minimum of a 2-hour trip even to the mainland, and then to get in a truck and be hauled someplace to a hospital, to be able to receive medical care at home.
Right.
And many of those, if they come out of the mountains, they may have been carried for several hours to get to our hospital, let alone to be transported again. And so the hospital has been an enormous blessing. I think that the Wesleyan Church has been characterized through the years by acts of mercy, focusing on education, investing in people, building together with the local people. And I think those characteristics of our ministry have helped people to appreciate us through the years.
Yeah.
Good thing to be known for.
You've been talking about, things that are encouraging in Haiti. Could you share some more of those? But also, as you think about the Haitian people, what are some challenges that they're facing now that people can be praying about, and as we give, be thinking about?
Wait, when you talk about encouraging and challenges in Haiti, you kind of have to put them together. It's a great way to ask the question,
Right.
Heath, because there's a tension there. One of the things that I'm somewhat encouraged about is that I believe that because of the earthquake, which is an unmitigated disaster at one level, I think there's a new focus and attention by world leaders and even private business and some of the large NGOs that wield a lot of influence and resources. I think that is or could be a good thing,
Right.
Depending on how that plays out. I think there's an increase in capacity within the country. One of the things that I see happening and have experienced is an interest on the part of what they call the diaspora, the Haitians, the million plus that live in North America. And many of them have taken advantage of the opportunities for education and personal advancement materially, and many of them are in a position to offer enormous benefits back to the country of Haiti. And I'm hearing an increased, especially since the earthquake, tremendous willingness to do that, a passion to do that. And that's very encouraging because it's Haitians who have the capacity and the resources to make a significant difference in their own country, bypassing all the cultural stuff and the language and communication stuff that might otherwise be an obstacle to that kind of development. One of the other things that I see is that the economy is actually booming in Haiti right now. I'm not an economist, but you don't have to be one to understand that things are very different now than they used to be. And there seems to be a lot of investment, private investment happening in the country. And so, at least for the time being, I think in the spiritual realm, one of the things that's most encouraging to me is I see a new sense, or I sense a new awareness in the evangelical church of Haiti, in the church in general in Haiti, to take seriously its role as a prophetic voice in the society. And that can't be underestimated as a potential for the church is sensing its responsibility to be an active change agent in the culture.
Yeah. This past spring, we had Aaron Dowds and your daughter, Beth Peterson, on. They talked about, they're both involved with Okipe, the orphanage there. Talk to us a little bit about orphans in Haiti and some of the challenges that's there.
The orphan situation, I think, for a long time to come is going to be something that needs to be addressed in the country. There are two definitions of orphans in a country like Haiti. One, of course, is when there are parents not in the picture at all. Whether it's an abandoned child or both parents not living. The other definition of an orphan is an economic orphan, when parents just are not able to care for children. And so you have both of those, and they both need care. And I think Okipe is a good example of a group of people seeing the need and deciding how best to help. The director of the orphanage, that is our good friend, feels very, very called to protect orphans, both economic and by death of a parent, and then to give them the best life possible in Haiti, allowing them to become adults, to then go in and change their community.
Right.
And it's just a joy to work and a partner with someone like that.
Yeah, and Okipe is not going to be about adopting kids out of Haiti to other countries, to other families or whatever. It's saying, wait, how can we invest and build great Haitian men and women?
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. One of the questions in the chat room is actually from Aaron, who's on with us from Scotland.
Great.
Thanks for joining, Aaron. And he wants to know, what can the Western church learn from the faith of Haitian Christians?
That's an excellent question. And I think, as Aaron has experienced worship there many times, and he'll definitely relate to that is, there's something very New Testament, first century, something very simple about the faith of people whose lives are uncluttered and who have to depend on God in a in a more tangible and a more real way for their daily bread.
Wow. Yeah.
That's something that most of the rest of us don't understand at any level. And
I'm convicted even as you say that. It's like, just uncluttered. In other words, I mean, let's be honest here. What we're talking about is in our Western society, stuff is, material things are a big part of our lives, and we depend on those rather than the Lord.
Well, they become distractions. And, I have to be careful because you can pluck this string till people just tune you out. But the North America and the countries of Europe that have enjoyed many years of blessing from God and prosperity, the biblical pattern is that God blesses churches and groups of people for them to become a blessing. But when those pathways or those opportunities for blessing are not utilized, if those people become very focused internally and stop being the channel by which God can direct resources to those who are suffering, there's a penalty for that. There's a price to be paid for that. And I think we see that ingrown self-absorption in most of the first world church these days in the North America and Europe.
Yeah, and let's take the opportunity here to maybe have someone tune us out. Here are the statistics that in America, most people, the average across the United States is that people will give about 2 to 3% of their annual income to a charity. Well, you know what the tithing rate is in America in the church? It's 2-3%. Yeah. And guess what? When you ask the question, how much does this local congregation spend on causes outside of itself? Guess what the percentage is? 2 to 3%. 2 to 3%. Yeah. And so it is. And your point is that God's called us to be a blessing, and when that becomes the focus, it's going to rise above what our national averages for charitable giving. And getting back to the original point here is that there are times that we do depend on those things more than faith itself.
I read it. I can't remember if it's million or billion. I know that's a big difference.
Slightly.
But that the American church in the last 25, 30 years had spent, again, it's either 500 million or 500 billion dollars on buildings and land, and at the same time we spent that much money on building and land, churches shrunk.
Yeah, it has to be the billion number, because I think the Wesleyan Church has spent that first number by itself.
And I'm not saying that that's evil or that's wrong or we should not buy land and build buildings, but I think the church, the Western church, to speak to Aaron's question, we invest in comfort. Mm-hmm. Well, can we get some new chairs? I don't like the color of this carpet. And Haitians, they go to church and, they're not concerned with that.
Well, it's kind of interesting. After the rebuild, we had about a third of our congregation significantly impacted by the earthquake. And probably that translates into 19 or 20 of our sanctuaries actually destroyed, crushed, flat, unusable. And because of the construction methods and materials in Haiti, my original estimate was we had about a $4 million loss. And the Wesleyan Church has been very generous, and I certainly don't want to be understood otherwise.
Sure. Right.
We've received somewhere in excess of $2 million at this point, which has been directly reinvested back into the reconstruction of these buildings. You have to understand that these congregations built them over a period of 70, 60, 50 years. Mm-hmm. And to lose all of that instantly, while they suffered other losses of employment and losses, family deaths and injuries that required a lot of layout of funds, they can't build these buildings back, and they're in a country instantly, and they're in a country where the sun shines every day, which is nice, but it's also hot, and it rains a lot, and hurricanes and so on and so forth. These churches need these ministry centers to be able to do the ministry God gives them in their local communities. And so it was a great response. We're about halfway done.
Right.
But you think about that. There's lots of churches that spent way more than the whole amount on one building.
Fair point.
And so...
Well, that's a good segue into, talking about money to how can, people hear the story of Haiti, they know the story of Haiti. So how can people here in the States, how can our viewers, where can they go to get involved, either to plan a trip or to invest financially in you guys personally as missionaries, but in the work that God is doing in Haiti?
Of course, I'm glad to hear that question. Well, the answer is what you would expect it to be, and that is there are lots of opportunities. There are opportunities to join mission teams. We use mission teams and need mission teams. We don't just bring them as some sort of a fundraising ploy. We use them. We need the skills, and we need the energy. And besides that, we have learned that as the teams come and as people, some of you have been there, when you see it and you visit it, you go home and you become a spark plug to represent us and to help encourage other people to get involved. I think we need to be global Christians and understand how we can interrelate and how we can help one another. And so joining a team is a great way. We average about 50 teams a year, have for the last few years, and still need them. We continue to need them, especially we still have needs for both the medical at the hospital site on Loganov and to do some outreach clinics. We also continue to need rebuild teams. We continue to need funding. I could really use a couple major partners. We're about halfway through the construction process. The easiest to reach churches, some of the larger churches in the urban areas along the main thoroughfares that can be reached by the road, most of those churches are the ones that are done or nearly done, nearly complete.
Wow.
We have about 10 churches we haven't even touched.
Wow.
And they're smaller, they're more rural.
Yeah.
To be honest with you, I can't take teams to some of those places. Some of those places are 6 or 7 hours walk off the road. And so I need money. I need to be able to say to the congregation, get a block machine on site, make your blocks. You're going to have to build it out of local materials. But they can and they will, and they're happy to. But I can't use the teams in the same way to finish that job.
Right.
The hospital building is about 2/3 complete. If you want to get updated pictures, anyone who goes to Wesleyan Mission Haiti, just those 3 words, no punctuation, Wesleyan Mission Haiti on Facebook, gets regular updates on both the guest house and the hospital construction. We're probably going to need another $500,000 too. Not just replace our capacity, but add to our capacity to put in that hospital the equipment that we need and the finishing touches to improve our serve. In other words, we're still sending people off the island for a lot of things related to surgeries and OBGYN and orthopedics and so forth. We would love to be able to increase our capacity there so that less people have to go off the island for treatment. And so we still have a need there. We still have a need for some short-term and long-term personnel. One of the things that you saw in the little video clip, Larry and Marty Grimes, who are some of my heroes.
Well, take a moment to tell people about the Grimes and what they're doing.
They're amazing people. They're people who have, in many ways, paid their dues. They've had great careers. They're 2 highly educated and highly skilled people. They've done a lot, not only in their professions, but for their church and for their community. And at the point of life where a lot of people are going to kick back and go fishing, they've come to Haiti to help us operate our English and IT or Computer Skills Institute. At the Institute, we attract the leaders, the cream of the crop, the teachers of teachers, the government leaders.
Oh, yeah.
They are the best and brightest of those communities, and they've come for advanced English training and help with their computer skills, which are critically important to their employability. It sharpens their tools dramatically to have those skills. And there's a great demand for it, and it's a great ministry tool because there's so much respect for a teacher in Haiti. When you have somebody of their quality relating to these men, they have enormous impact and influence, whether they're believers or not, as they come to them. If they're believers, they're discipling them. If they're not believers, they're a very attractive people to represent the kingdom of God.
I got to visit both what Larry and Marty were doing and actually sit in one of full class with Marty. And you're exactly right. You've got governmental leaders. You've got principals from some of the local schools. I mean, just this broad spectrum of people. The one guy who played on the international soccer team.
Right.
He loved, I can't remember his name, but he loved to talk about that. A few other things.
And on that note, the reason Dan was leading into that is that Marty and Larry are finishing their time, and we are looking for English teachers and IT teacher that could come in. Marty and Larry have advanced this so that actually we just need someone to come in and take over where they are leaving off. They have done a lot of work so that it's not a lot of work for new teachers to come. So anyone that has some idea on that can get in touch with us, and we can go from there, leading them to global partners.
Let me say this too, something that the two of you won't say, but I'll say, and I'll say to our viewers, our listeners, Dan and Joy have to raise their own support for Haiti. And so one of the things that we love to do on this show is to get people in front of you that we know God has a call in their life. They've been effective in ministry. And so if you're looking to support someone from your church, man, we highly, highly recommend them. One of the things we like to do on this show is, we'll cover current stories, and a lot of times these things are bound to the U.S. But Matthew found a couple of Haiti stories. We thought, wow, this would be
very,
cool.
very current too. I mean, they're
very
in
cool.
the news right now.
To look at these in terms of the Haitian context, because with American eyes we might gloss over these. So the first one has to do with plastics that are being banned, plastic products being banned in Haiti. And yet that could be problematic. So why don't you give us kind of the context here and why this would even be an issue?
Well, one of the things in a country like Haiti, they have a tendency to leap over generations of technology and development of infrastructure to the today world. And one of the interesting things over the last few years is that the street vendors used to sell, you had to have your own container, or you borrowed one from them and you ate your food and gave it back to them. Well, with the advent of styrofoam lunch boxes, the kind that you get in a restaurant to carry out boxes, they're everywhere, and the street vendors love them. The problem is that they're virtually indestructible. So
we could rebuild Haiti.
Yeah, they end up. I know this is mind-boggling, but they end up in the streets, and in the what sewage infrastructure exists in the capital city, which is inadequate at best, and in the drainages, the open drainages, in such quantities that they actually block huge drainage canals with styrofoam and plastic. And they're so intertwined, they actually have to dig them out with backhoes and with excavators. And then under the street, you can't imagine, they actually send people into those holes with pickaxes and poles and disentangle and try to pull that awful stuff. It's as bad as you're imagining and probably worse. And it just completely, it's a disaster. So it's not just a minor little, well, it looks kind of cluttered around here. We're talking about mountains of plastic. And the article that you're talking about captures the essence of it very well. It is a dilemma because in order to ban them, they have to provide something in their place. And whatever they're providing in their place is going to be more expensive. And the people who live at the very lowest level of the society, unfortunately, according to recent statistics, Haiti has more people living at that level than any other nation in the world. They're the ones who are complaining in some ways. They're the ones who are paying the price.
Yeah.
And so there's some movement to try to develop the capacity to make biodegradable lunch boxes. We pay the price for everybody does. We live on the sea, on the ocean. And if after a big rain in Port-au-Prince, that stuff's all flushed out into the bay, and if the wind is from the south, it blows it right up to our seawall, and it's amazing. I mean, piles of trash overnight.
Wow. Well, Matthew was talking about with water bags.
Yeah, so the most popular way of getting water, whether you're out at a work site or wherever you are in the community, is not a water bottle, but literally a plastic bag. Let's see, I'm kind of on the camera. I don't even know how to. Yeah. I mean, about this big, about yay big.
You bite the corner off and suck the water out.
Right. And those water bags, I mean, literally everywhere, and not just Port-au-Prince, but
all over the country.
Like, it wouldn't be Haiti if there wasn't a plastic water bag somewhere within 10 feet.
Well, those aren't included in this first ban.
the good thing about it is the reason why those water bags are so vital is that it's pure drinking water. And everyone desperately understands today the need for that. So those water bags are not in that ban that article's speaking of. The other good thing is that the plastic bottles are not mentioned in here because they have already been dealt with to a certain level. There are a couple of big companies that have come in and are recycling those. Right. So we're talking specifically about the black little shopping bags and the styrofoam in this article, and it is an issue.
Another article at one point mentions them as if like, could this be a follow-up thing? What will happen from here?
Like it's a worry that what if we get rid of the water bags?
It is a great concern. In fact, they intended to include them in this legislation, and they took them out because they recognized that there would be a huge pushback.
Yeah, what do you do? Because you don't.
What would be the alternative?
Right,
exactly.
Where do you go to get?
Exactly.
You're out working. Where do you go to get a cup of water?
They're very cheap, a few cents a piece, and so it's a lifesaver for the people. And so they showed some sensitivity in doing this by steps and not including the water bags in the first round here.
How well can government enforce this kind of law? So we say, okay, so this is, I see where the need is for that, and I see the problems on both sides, why it's needed, why it creates a problem for your lower class or your lower economic folks. How well is Port-au-Prince going to actually make that happen? Because that's something that just, like, I feel like, well, I could pass a bunch of laws for Port-au-Prince, but I have no idea how you'd actually go about
enforcing it,
making it happen.
Well, it's no secret that the Haitian government struggles to maintain its basic functions, and that's an excellent question. But I want to pitch something else into that conversation, and that is this: if the Haitian government, with the assistance of other governments who are, if they're sincere, and I think many of them are, trying to help the Haitian people, if they provide a reasonably priced alternative, you won't have to worry about that. The people are not happy about the condition of their country.
Good point.
They're very sensitive about it. And so the issue isn't enforcement. The issue really is providing a reasonable alternative. There'll be no problem with enforcement if the people have access to a reasonable alternative.
Okay, the second story here is a peanut butter story.
Right.
So
the peanut butter wars.
The peanut butter wars. That's great. So, I've kind of just thrown it out there. Go ahead and kind of explain to our listeners, just this whole issue in Haiti right now.
Well, it's really an interesting story because there was a peanut butter developed, which is nutritional. There were some additives put into this peanut butter, and it was being put together in small packages and given to different hospitals. UNICEF was even buying the first factory that was processing this. And so it was really, really a great situation. Take it from there.
And it's needed. Like, why do we need nutritionally fortified peanut butter?
Well, it's one of the they used to call it Miracle Mamba. That was the way they marketed this. And I hate to say this, but Mamba means peanut butter in Haiti or in Creole. But as development organizations and mission organizations, I hate to use marketing terminology, but we have to market ourselves. I mean, people have to understand what we do. We have to make a case for support for people to want to respond to us. And this was a great thing because peanut butter is grown local. Peanuts are grown locally. The peanut butter can be made locally. It's peanuts don't store well, and so peanut butter stores better than peanuts. So and more safely. So to turn peanuts quickly into peanut butter, and then people are familiar with the taste. It's a common food, and it's very easy to add other nutrients that may have no flavor or some slightly objectionable flavor. It's easy to mix it, especially if you sweeten it up a little bit. And children if you give the typical child in Haiti a spoonful of peanut butter, they'll walk around licking that for half an hour. They love it. It's a great taste to them. And so, if I'm not mistaken, this was actually developed in Africa, but brought to Haiti by one or more organizations. They developed this Miracle Mamba, and they marketed it. People could buy it as a very, very substantive way to give people nutrition. Like in a hospital or clinic setting, it was small. It was a small package. You weren't giving people bags of things. There was instant effect. I mean, the children would eat it right in front of you. It was just a great way for a lot of clinics and people who are concerned about feeding children, feeding programs and so forth. And so it's been in Haiti for quite some time. It was fairly recently that particular organization decided to take a big step and to borrow money and to build a factory to produce it at another level. And unfortunately, or it remains to be seen, but another organization came and checked out what they were doing, and instead of plugging in with them to help them with distribution, because there was lots of capacity at that factory, they built their own. This other organization has more resources, seemingly unlimited resources at this point in time, or virtually so. And so now we have 2 factories which have more capacity than the country
And
of
there are
Haiti.
people to eat peanut butter.
And so what's happening now, the second organization, and I'm trying to be as balanced as the man who summarized the article. They're talking about this NGO that's supported by outside funds is talking about going into commercial peanut butter production to help support their operation.
Right.
The problem with that is that there are already Haitian companies making peanut butter. So
and so by
this
doing that, you're taking
subsidized NGO is going to now compete on an unlevel playing field with people who are trying to develop sustainable businesses within the country. I'm sorry, I have a problem.
Yeah, and rightly so. So another interesting thing, same on the peanut butter thing, but not out of this story, but the talk about a mission team that would pack peanut butter in their suitcase. Are they doing something to help, or because there's enough peanut butter from this one peanut butter factory that is made by Haitian peanut butter makers, should we be throwing jars of peanut butter in our bags and saying, here, we're going to take this to the orphanage or take it wherever it's going to be? Because I guess that used to be the...
Well, it's been fairly recent. It's a fairly recent development that in Haiti they have the capacity to do all of these things. That's been developing through the years, but it's fairly recent that they have developed these capacities. So old habits die hard. The truth of the matter is that there are not very many things anymore that you should put in your bag and bring to Haiti. The need is for liquid resources that can fill the holes that exist. Most everything that we used to have to bring into the country can now be purchased there, and that there are still some building related materials that are virtually unavailable, but even that's changing on a day-to-day basis. The problem is that people want to buy something. They want to bring something with them. It's just kind of a human tendency to want to gather things and bring them. But the truth is that, let's say it this way, that's not as useful as it used to be. There are still things that we need, and we very often will tap a team that's on their way in and say, we need a certain bearing for our vehicles, or sometimes it's just a personal favor to the missionaries. The ladies can't find.
I need a Snickers bar.
Almond Joy.
I bought from Lowe's and managed to pack in a suitcase for Greg an actual industrial air compressor.
Yes.
And hide it in a suitcase.
Yeah.
It was the only thing in the suitcase. The suitcase must have weighed, it was under 50 pounds because we didn't have to pay extra for it. But American Airlines imported that thing.
Well, there are still lots of things that are useful that way.
Now, go ahead.
Well,
Sorry.
real quick, and then I'll let you, Heath.
Yeah.
To me, also in this story, there is another issue, and that is at a governmental level. So, let's take the United States here.
Right.
I grew up in the state of Wisconsin, and so one of the things you could not do in that state is you could not sell a product below your cost, because what you were doing is you were killing competition.
Exactly.
And so I think that gets back to some of the issues talking about infrastructure,
Absolutely
government, because there's no oversight here. I mean, in some places that could not happen because it would be recognized that, okay, we're going to put someone out of business right away here. We're going to destroy the ecosystem.
The last question we got here from the chat room had to do with a lot of what we're talking about, in that some people may or may not know this. 2 Land Rovers were bought for the work down there,
Right.
and are not in use to our knowledge.
Right.
What's the story with that? Are you allowed to comment on air about the delay in the Haitian customs, and where can we send money to make it happen?
No.
Well, I'm glad. I'm
We're
glad
gonna miss Heath on the show. I just want you to know that.
he has contributed so much to this. Well, I do want to push back a little bit on that and say that one of the things that I probably should have mentioned when it comes to challenges, I'm sorry to say that our mission and other evangelical missions and other NGOs that have had influence in Haiti through the years have not been nearly strident enough in the areas of social justice. And when corruption is an inconvenience to us, it is a crushing burden to the Haitian people because they deal with the effects of it and what it does to their government and how it hinders the function of government and the things that they should enjoy from their government. And I'm sorry to say that I am afraid that we have not made that anywhere near the central message that we should have. And the more I understand about the heart of God for the poor, especially those who are powerless to change their circumstances, we're dealing with this corruption. And even the Land Rovers, and don't get me started, but even the Land Rovers are an inconvenience to us. But they represent a crushing daily burden to the Haitian people. And I think that had we made the social justice issues more of a priority, more of a central part of our message, if we had combined our influence and our leverage with our own government to put pressure on the Haitian government, that things could be very different in the country. And I think it's something that we need to repent of. And we need to change our approach. The Land Rovers are a perfect example. They've been in customs for nearly 2 years now. And every time we think they're just about ready, they throw another wrench in the works. We didn't even ask for tax-free entry. We've paid the taxes on those vehicles. And I hope that we're near their release. There are signs that we're at least closer to that. But I think it's been a good lesson to us and to me personally. Because as I've prayed and people have prayed, you know, I found out in my personal spiritual life that when I pray for something that seems to be a no-brainer, and God doesn't seem to be answering that prayer, many times I've reeled back to say, okay, what is God saying to me? And I think this is one way that God has said to me, you should have been paying attention to these corruption issues a long time ago.
And I think... I don't know if you know this. We deal with that in our country as well. Not as far as corruption. As far as corruption.
Hold on, where are we going?
No, I'm just saying.
We're going to miss
More
Heath.
Heath.
That's what I'm saying.
I think.
Pull out your little violin.
What you're saying is that it's very hard. Man's heart is corrupt.
Absolutely.
And that is only
we have
changed.
A sin problem.
Yes, and we can only do that through the power of the gospel. And how do we do that? How are we proactive in that? You don't change a country by changing the government. You change a country by helping change the people.
Right, absolutely. And that's a subject for a whole other conversation because it's a question, it's the answer to the question, why are some of these major organizations with billions of dollars of resources so ineffectual in a country like Haiti? And it has to do with this very issue. It has to do with understanding the root causes of poverty. And unless you understand the root causes of poverty to be an expression of man's brokenness and the brokenness of relationships that make building from the ground up virtually impossible, as long as you define poverty as the lack of resources, you cannot be effective in a long-term sustainable change because you're addressing the wrong problems.
You know what? We don't have a big corporation that's over us, so this show can run as long as we want it to. And so let me, I agree with the sin position on this, that where the fall has a lot to do with this. At the same time, let's not forget our heritage as Wesleyans in that you had in the founding Wesleyan Methodists, especially in Luther Lee and in Orange Scott, there was a willingness to tackle the system. There was a willingness to stand up to the system and say that this is unjust. We have social structures that are wrong, and they must be created or be eliminated. And they were part of the most radical forms of. I tell people all the time that you could be an abolitionist but not be an integrationist. That's not who Luther Lee and Orange Scott were. They were integrationists.
Yes.
Right.
There was this sense that we are created in the imago Dei, the image of God,
Right.
and that there is a level of respect
Right.
that comes with that.
Right.
And whenever society or an organization violates that, you're violating the very heart of God. You're violating His creation. And when Christ came, He not only came to redeem, but to restore. And at the resurrection, restoration started. The kingdom of God is inbreaking on us now.
Yeah.
And so these do need to be very real issues for the church. And we need to pray for you guys as you are navigating these waters. Easy for me to sit here in the studio and talk about the importance
Yeah.
of that. But I mean, I hear
Yeah.
you on this one.
Well, after the earthquake, we were in a very interesting situation because as the billions of dollars of resources poured into the country, many of those organizations made absolutely no attempt to integrate with the religious organizations as if they were afraid of them somehow. And the interesting thing is that we are the ones who had the distribution networks. We are the
Oh,
ones
wow.
who understood the
Yeah.
culture. We have 70 years of history
Yeah.
there. We have an enormous network. And it wasn't until they were desperate when some of these organizations began to have food supplies and emergency supplies literally piling up in mountains in the receiving center at the airport before they would come to the organizations and say, like MAF, Mission Aviation Fellowship, to which we all relate. Do you have networks? Can you distribute this stuff? And Mission Aviation Fellowship leadership said, absolutely we can. And they got on the phone, they started calling us, and we could disappear the stuff as fast as they could pilot there because we live there. We have networks. We know the people. The expats speak the language and have direct relationships with the Haitian national co-workers.
Sure.
And we were able to virtually instantly deliver the goods and services that these people were bringing into the country. They're hiring interpreters and hiring administrators and hiring drivers and trying to set up their own distribution networks in a relief situation. When we are standing there, we weren't without resources.
Right.
Because in our case, the Wesleyan Church was very generous, and I've said this in many places. One of the reasons why it was tolerable to be in that, can I say hellish on the air?
Yes, you can.
In that hellish situation.
Again, we don't have a corporation.
I thought
This
it was-
isn't actually mandated by the
Okay.
FCC either. So
The only thing that would have made it worse to be in those circumstances would be to be there without resources. And we weren't without resources. And I'm grateful to the Wesleyan Church and some of our other friends
Sure.
like Lemonade and
Yeah.
other of our partner organizations. They made sure that we had in our hands what we needed to respond. But when I watched the billions of dollars of resources and this complete absence of communication and collaboration, it's tragic, and it continues to this
Yeah,
day.
one anecdotal story. My son he's in Kuwait now. He's National Guard, and he put in to go to Haiti after the earthquake, and it looked like it was going to happen. And finally, one day he came home and said, "Well, it's canceled. We're not going." And he said, "And the reason we're not going is because we're just having trouble distributing everything we have there now." And so now it was just complete discouragement.
Yeah.
That while they were trying to help, they realized that they weren't helping, and that they were just contributing to problems. And my son worked in administration, so.
Well, one of the things that, should I say arrogance, the arrogance of people who work in the State Department and other people who make these influential decisions, I think sometimes they have a natural prejudice, a natural misunderstanding of religious organizations as to say we would only give the food that came to us to people who carry our card, and they fundamentally don't understand the nature of our mission there is to do exactly what they were trying to do, and that is to distribute resources and to raise the
And have been doing it for 7 decades.
and have been doing it for 70 years with lots of track record if they cared to check us out. But
well, listen, it's been great.
before we go, one more question in the chat room.
Go ahead.
Sorry to
Go
interrupt
ahead.
you. All right. So this is Holly Churchill wants to know who's your favorite missionary in Haiti. And I want to just give our listeners the knowledge that she is currently a missionary in Haiti. Right now, so.
Everybody loves Holly.
That's all you're going to say? You're not going to...
I'm not going to start the whole favorite thing. That's a little dangerous.
All right. Again, thanks so much for taking time out to be with us. It's been a delight to have you here in studio. And we just say to our listeners, encourage you to go to our website and just tap us for any information that you would want. But before we close the show... we've had a lot of fun.
Personal story to us.
Yes, personal story. We've had a lot of fun over the years with the Tra-La-La Man.
Yeah.
And I don't know how it escaped us, but he died this past June. I got a little thing here. Let me see if I can find it. Sorry, I should have been ready. I'll just read this. We didn't have They Said It today, but this would have been our quote. Quote, "The death of the exceptional singer Edward Keel is an irretrievable loss to Russian culture. He was truly a people's artist. Several generations of people loved his songs not only in this country but also abroad." Russian Prime Minister Dmitry Medvedev expressing the country's loss of singing artist Edward Keel, known to most American audiences as the internet star Mr. Tra-La-La. So
as we end our show here in a moment, I guess as we give our final sign off, we will end.
Yes.
I was going to slow it down to like Funeral March,
No,
but we'll just keep it in the
all
original
glory.
form, the Tra-La-La song.
yeah, real quick, Heath, where can our listeners find you?
They can go to heathmullican.com. Going to have some great videos up this week, and that's where they can follow me on Twitter and all that good stuff.
All right, Brother TG.
Yeah, you can find me at matthewtg.com.
All right. Find me at Twitter at AKC64. Any website that we know we can find you guys at Global Partners. Any other places people can look?
The best place to track us and to keep current with us is Facebook, Wesleyan Mission Haiti. Just those 3 words, no punctuation. Wesleyan Mission Haiti.
And you can also follow Global Partners on Twitter at GP Now.
All right.